A very warm welcome to you and for the teaching for the Parish Evangelisation cells. And the theme, the topic I have chosen is the root of the church's growth. Since Easter Sunday, I have been focusing on the Acts of the Apostles in my preaching, even throughout the week. And the reason being that I personally find the Acts of the Apostles very invigorating. Invigorating to me, but also it invigorates the Christian community. And this teaching is focused on a one-line summary. We come across it. Luke gives us so many summaries in the Acts of the Apostles. And this summary consists of one verse. I quote, it's taken from Acts chapter 9, verse 31. The church throughout all of Judea, Galilee, and Samaria had peace and continued to be built up and multiply as it walked, as it lived, in the fear of the Lord and the encouragement of the Holy Spirit. So that's Acts chapter 9, verse 31. The Acts of the Apostles is the second part of a 2-volume work, with the Gospel, according to Luke, being the first volume, and known as Luke Acts. These two documents were written by the same author, both addressed to the same person, Theophilus, and have an identical aim: God's purpose to bring salvation in all of its fullness to all, universal salvation. Acts has been considered by biblical scholars as the most exciting and pivotal book among the 27 books of the New Testament. It is a riveting account of the origins and growth of the Christian movement, from its birth at Pentecost to its success among the Gentiles, all the way to Rome, and comes between the 4 Gospels and Paul's letters, and has therefore played an indispensable, a vital part in relating these two collections to each other. As regards Paul's letters, Acts provides a narrative background against which several of his letters can more easily be understood and interpreted. Furthermore, it is a deeply inspiring book. Any contemporary Christian wanting to know how to be a disciple of Christ ought to read Acts to know how the first Jesus followers lived. The title Acts of the Apostles, known as such since at least the 2nd century, is rather a misnomer. It is essentially the Acts of Peter in the first, from chapters 1 to 12, and Paul in the second half of the book, chapters 13-28, with vignettes of 2 deacons, Stephen and Philip, and Barnabas, Paul's co-worker. It would be more accurate if we named it Acts of the Holy Spirit. The first chapter records the promise of the Holy Spirit. The second, his descent, and the rest of the book, his work in and through the church. The key text in this book is Jesus' statement of the Great Commission to the disciples, highlighting the two major themes of Acts, that is, the Holy Spirit and witness. I quote, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria to the end of the earth." That's where we find it in chapter 1, verse 8. To my knowledge, this, in fact, is the plan, the outline that the Acts narrative follows. In addition, from chapter 1, where the Great Commission is recorded, right up to chapter 28, the end of the book, this centrifugal and universal missionary program that we see unfolding in Acts is Spirit-endowed, infused evangelization accomplished by witnesses. Luke had a theological aim along with a historical one in writing Acts. Let me explain this. His approach can thus be called theological history, since it views God, that's what it means, theological history, it views God by means of His Spirit as acting in the arena of history, that is, in the life of the church, and through that revealing His ways and His will to His people. Therefore, the events Luke chose to emphasize in Acts were selected because of the value they had in presenting truths he wanted to communicate. Therefore, it is our task is to find those truths and to see what lasting principles we can draw from them that are applicable to the life of our parish. The question is this, that the one-line summary is addressing. What is the fundamental truth that Luke conveys in the one-verse summary quoted above? Luke's account of the conversion of Paul in chapter 9 comes to an end with this tantalizing summary of progress, which records a period of comfortable gleam of liberty and peace that the original Jerusalem church, now dispersed and decentralized, enjoys throughout the districts of Judea, Galilee, and Samaria. Behind this diversity lies a larger unity, something called the church, so much so it's used in the singular, which is being built up and multiplying throughout these country areas. The persecution that broke out after Stephen's death petered out with the conversion and subsequent departure from Jerusalem of Paul, the arch persecutor who became the church's greatest advocate. Moreover, in this generalized report, Luke stresses that the numerical growth and steady expansion of this church during this time have not been caused by the sheer respite from serious opposition, persecution, but exclusively by these scattered disciples, both men and women, living in the fear of the Lord and the encouragement of the Holy Spirit. Opposition, persecution became indeed a catalyst for the spread of the church. What does this language, fear of the Lord, mean? It indicates that these house churches across the whole region conducted themselves with reverence and awe in response to the Lord's mighty wonders in their lives, which served as signs of the Holy Spirit's presence, namely of His visible encouragement, exhortation, consolation, comfort. Parakletos. Not only in days of persecution, but also in days of prosperity. In other words, these house churches were not only faithful in their worship, but joyous in faith. They stuck to the ways of the Lord and sang in those ways. And as a consequence of their Spirit-inspired faithfulness and witness, they continued to be built up and multiply. I want to quote one of the foremost international New Testament scholars, Jimmy Dunn. And Dunn sums up incisively the basic truth of the apostolic church's numerical growth attributed to, caused by the Holy Spirit, and the firm principle that we can work out from it. I quote, the prominence of the Spirit in Luke's narrative from Pentecost onwards makes clear beyond doubt that for Luke, the mission of the church could not hope to be effective without this empowering from God, that is, the Spirit of God, which transcends human ability and transforms human inability. That is the power of the Holy Spirit. Transcends human ability and transform human inability. Luke, by means of the above one-line summary, is robustly insisting that the church's birth and growth did not come from its own power. The disciples were indeed empowered by God's Holy Spirit. Thus, they become more Holy Spirit conscious than problem conscious. And that's the gist of the crux of the whole Acts of the Apostles. There is a message for us. Not so much problem, challenge conscious as Holy Spirit conscious. So, what is the abiding principle we can draw from this basic truth? The abiding principle we can draw from this basic truth and apply it to our life in the parish of Holy Innocents, is that when the Holy Spirit works in our lives, there is real buzz and numerical growth. Why? Because He motivates, energizes, and enables us to shift the parish. And I'm quoting here Pope Francis. It shifts the parish from a self-referential or self-absorbed model to a missionary one, and challenges us to go forth from our comfort zone in order to reach all the peripheries in need of the light of the gospel. Now, my question that I want you actually to address at the meeting is this, in the light of this quotation and in the light, of course, of the truth and the principle enshrined in this one statement, one line statement of Luke, is this: where do you fit in this shifting movement and expansion of the parish? God bless.